You are listening to episode 72 of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. I received questions in my question box over on Instagram, and I'm going to save most of them for my Q&A segment at the end of each episode. But I decided today that I will just go through and answer some of them because there are so many, and a lot of them are just really short answers, and I thought they'd be good as a collected episode together.
My name is Lisa, mom of 6 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way.
All right, let's just dive right in. What are your family's favorite snacks, store-bought and or homemade? So I've had phases in life where I make the kids snacks and, we have those on hand and you wrap them individually, but I'm just not in that phase of life currently. Usually the kids will reach for dried fruit, nuts, frozen fruit, which is not my favorite, but they do it a lot because if you drop a frozen blueberry on the floor, you kind of have a mess, but that is something they get a lot. Any fruit we have, so right now we have lots of apples because it's in season. Also just what we're eating for the day. So for example, right now on the counter, there are a few leftover sourdough pancakes from breakfast. Those will get eaten as a snack by somebody. I'll just leave it out. I oftentimes after lunch will leave out what we had and it'll get eaten up. Sometimes I do once a day cooking, which I talked about in, I believe, episode 70, where I just will make something like a double or triple batch of something and then have it simmering on the stove all day long, and people can dip from it, like for example, if it's a soup, throughout the day. If they're hungry, we'll do that a lot. So real food as a snack. There might be sourdough English muffin laying around. Essentially just whatever they can get their hands on. Cheese, bananas, things like that. One of my daughters also really loves to bake, so sometimes she will either bake an experiment or actually follow a recipe, and I make her go between the two. I like for her to experiment and discover how things go together, what you need to make a proper cookie or cake, but then oftentimes I make her actually follow a recipe because I think it's good for her reading comprehension and then just to follow directions. And then also so we end up with something that's tried and true. Do you preserve food in any way? Have you ever canned or salt cured meat? I have canned. I don't really love it. The times that I've canned, I have felt like, oh my word, I just spent an entire day for the amount of applesauce my kids are going to eat in the next 2 days, I've never salt cured meat. I've only ever just used the freezer for meat. Most of my preserving is freezer. So we just went apple picking at a local orchard. Then we also were invited out to my husband's uncle's house, and he had 2 trees that he was like, just take them all. I don't even want them, take them all. And all we did was we peeled and sliced them all up, put them in freezer bags, and then froze them. And I've been having apple, cinnamon, kefir smoothies every morning for breakfast. And that's typically what I do. I just freeze. And I know it's not always the most tasty thing to do. So when you get a huge harvest of peppers, slicing them up and freezing them doesn't allow for it to have the best taste, but it does preserve the nutrition and it works. And so that's typically the route that I go. Same with tomatoes. I just take the green part off the top, throw them all in a blender, blend them up, put them in freezer bags and freeze them. You can plop them in for chili, for soups, spaghetti sauces, salsa, anything. So I'm the lazy preserver. That's just where I'm at in life. I like the idea, but again, uninterrupted time in the kitchen is hard to find. Please share your favorite podcasts and sources you use to grow as a mom, cook, and an entrepreneur. So I love podcasts. Some of my favorite ones are Homemaker Chic. That one is really fun to listen to. Old Fashioned on Purpose. That's Jill Winger. She talks about all things homestead. So she talks about canning, greenhouses, planting, chickens, all the things. She is 10 years in on her homesteading journey, and so she just has so much knowledge. I love Relatable with Allie B. Stuckey. She is a Christian. She just articulates everything so well. She always expresses things that I'm thinking, but I'm not able to say in a way that I want to. And so I just love listening to her commentary. I like John Piper. He is a pastor. His Ask Pastor John podcast is really good because it's just short little segments where somebody will write in, ask a question. And so it's really easy to listen to because it's quick. You can get to the point before getting distracted again, which often happens to me when I'm listening to a podcast. As far as business podcasts, I like The Blogging Millionaire. I like Food Blogger Pro. I like Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn. I will say that I've outgrown some of them, like Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn. A lot of those are more for beginners who are just trying to figure out how to create income online, and the ideas often are things that I already know about. It's still fun to listen to, but I do get real actionable tips from some of the blogging podcasts that I listen to. As far as health, I occasionally listen to the Wellness Mama podcast with Katie Wells. It honestly overwhelms me sometimes. I like listening to things like that in certain phases of my life, but in some phases, it just all is too much. And I'm like, I'm just gonna feed my people real food and then pray and hope everything works out, because I just cannot even think about, down to the very tiny, small things. I'm just not at that phase in my life. I have been. There have been times, probably when I first got into natural living, where I just consumed all things wellness. I would listen to Wellness Mama, I'd listen to Dr. Axe, but right now I'm more in okay, I feel like I'm comfortable with this knowledge. I don't need more knowledge, because at some point I have too much and I'm looking at every little thing and I'm getting stressed out about the paint on the walls, and I just can't do that. I can only go so far. And so again, I like listening to Wellness Mama. If a topic pops up, I am subscribed. If a topic pops up that is currently applicable to something that we're going through, I will put it on, but it mostly just makes me feel more stressed out about things. And so I typically will avoid that. A friend recently told me about Verity. So I've listened to a few episodes of that, but I can't say that I've given it a long enough listen to say much about it, but I do trust her opinion. And so I'm sure that I will probably love it. Just popping on editing this podcast about a week and a half after I shot it, because life got busy. And I've had time to listen to several episodes of Verity by Felicia Masonheimer, and I highly recommend it now. I was just listening to an episode today, and it's about motherhood culture. So many things in there that I've never thought about, things that I probably fall into in some regards. I mean, I feel like I've matured as a Christian to where I don't fall into these things as much as I did when I was a young mom, but I can totally see all of just exactly what she said. Really, you should just go listen to episode 4. I believe she just started a new season. The motherhood culture episode on the podcast Verity with Felicia Masonheimer. She also had one recently on breastfeeding. It was so good. If you've ever struggled to breastfeed and you've felt like you are less of a mother, or anything with the mommy wars, as we like to call them, I would definitely recommend checking her out. How do you guys stay so slim and healthy? I get asked a lot about exercise, and I have to say, I am not the exercising type. I was very athletic as a kid. I did track and gymnastics and soccer, but now I can't get past it feeling like a waste of time for me. I just, as a mom of 6, I have so little uninterrupted time that I have things I want to do with it. Again, it's one of those things where you have time for what you want to have time for. I'm a firm believer in that. So apparently I don't care about exercising. I just have to be completely honest there. We try to eat whole foods. We do go out to eat on occasion, but it's rare enough that 90% of our diet is just real foods, not always completely from scratch, but for pasta, for example, I'll use an einkorn pasta from Jovial. I try to cook as fresh and local and seasonal as possible. Let's just get this out of the way. I firmly believe that most of the staying slim thing for people has to do with genetics. It just is. And so I have my dad, he's super slim. All of his sisters are slim. Nobody really worries about it. And that is just their natural way. And then there's some people who have to really, really work just to stay at a just manageable weight. And so I don't know, I don't feel very knowledgeable enough or very qualified to talk about that. You guys know what we eat because I share in what we eat videos all the time, what I cook for my family. Yes, we live a fairly active lifestyle. We don't, sit and watch TV very often. We're pretty on the go doing projects, things like that. But I just can't help but believe that most of it is, for most people, it's just pretty genetic. How did you manage to sleep with a newborn and the kids when husband was still at work? So I am a co-sleeper. I don't know if I necessarily want to say that you should do that. I don't want to recommend it. But with all of my babies, I slept with them until about 12 months. I still have Daniel in my bed probably half the night. It really just makes it easy because he can just nurse throughout the night if he really needs to. I will say that all of my kids sleep through the night by about age 3, and then they're never a problem anymore. So all of my kids over the age of 3 sleep in their rooms. They sleep to a decent hour, which is about 6:30. Now, Micah, he's 2. He still wakes up at super early times, but all of my kids went through this phase. And so I know it's just a phase and eventually he'll get through it. So I just try not to stress and worry about it too much. How do you balance getting things done with littles? Mine are 2.5 and 6 months and need all mama's attention. Well, nap times, that is how. With that age of children, I would make sure that they both slept at the same time in the afternoon, and then throughout the day, don't worry about getting anything done. You can have a 2.5-year-old kind of follow you around. You could put the baby in the wrapper on your back and be able to get a lot of things done. But you could save most of your work for a nap in bed. The wonderful thing about kids is they require way more sleep than adults. So you should be able to get 2 hours at the afternoon nap time, and then additional at least 2 at bedtime, because babies that age should be going to bed around 7, and most adults don't go to bed till about 10. So I found that even if my kids demanded my attention all throughout their waking hours, which they do, I still had about 5 hours that I could spend however I wanted to. And whatever that is, whether you just need it to get all of your housework done, or if you have some kind of outside goal, thankfully, kids do sleep more than adults. All right, the next one is books on parenting you have enjoyed. So I've read a lot of books on parenting. Most of them I read before I was a parent and in the very early years of parenting. And I've learned a lot from those, mostly probably what I don't believe maybe about parenting. As a Christian, there's a tendency to want to choose books that are very legalistic. Essentially, these are the kind of books that make you feel like if you do XYZ, you will have perfect children. And before you have kids or before your kids are a certain age, it's really easy to believe them and to trust them and put your hope in your ability to be a model, stellar, exemplary parent. And it just turns out that kids all are their own individuals. They're all very different, and they're all their own sinful people born into the same world with the same temptations. And so I felt a lot of guilt when I was a young parent because I saw my inability to live up to these standards that I read about in these books. But I felt like some people probably really made it possible. It had the perfect children. And I no longer like to read books like that. I actually had a very wise woman in my life, in my church at the time, who pointed out some of the books that I had read that definitely were these legalistic types of books. So anyways, I guess I have more books that I don't recommend than ones that I do. But as far as homeschooling books, I'm currently reading A Waking Wonder by Sally Clarkson, and it's really good. And I really like it because it discusses the philosophy of education. I've also read all of Charlotte Mason's books, and then there's some modern day books that are in easier to understand language. So lots of encouraging books with the homeschooling. I guess I shy away a little bit from parenting books, but if you have any really good ones, send some recommendations my way. Do you have a homemade pumpkin puree recipe? So you can do this so many different ways. Just think of a pumpkin as any other squash, like a butternut squash, and how you would cook that. So for me personally, there's a lot of ways I do it. My favorite way is just to peel the pumpkin, cut it in half, scoop out the seeds, cut it into chunks, and put it in my Instant Pot and cook it on high for about 30 minutes or on high pressure. And then just put it in a blender. And that's how I've been doing it this year. We've already cooked 2 large Darredale pumpkins. I have a whole bunch more to cook after they've served their purpose as decor for a while. Once I bring the Christmas stuff out, I'll probably cook up some more of them. You can also cut them in half, scoop out the seeds, and just bake them in their skin and then scoop it out. I do find that with some pumpkins, the skin is too thin and you end up having a really difficult time separating the cooked flesh of the pumpkin from the skin. And that's why I like to cook it, or I like to peel it first. But either one works. That's more of a roasted pumpkin taste, which is also really delicious, especially for making soups. How do you all handle lawn care? You have so many fenced areas and animals. So we don't have a ton of fenced areas just yet. We want to, but we don't. At the moment, we just have the chickens in a chicken tractor that we move around. And then we have a small fenced in area for our goats and our calf. And then I also move the calf around daily on a lead rope just so that she can get fresh grass. My husband, when we moved to this property, actually went and purchased his first zero-turn mower, which really helps us to manage the areas that do require mowing. Now, eventually, we plan to have it all fenced in, and I plan to have enough animals to keep it mowed down that we don't really have to do a whole lot of mowing. But yeah, just a really fast zero turn makes it a pretty small job. Would your parents ever want to be on your channel or be interviewed on your podcast? Well, I know for sure that my mom listens to this podcast. So Mom, would you want to be? Actually, my sister talked about doing that one time. My younger sister. That would be fun. I don't know. They're really, really busy. So I'd have to catch them on a day where they would be able to come on, and maybe you guys could send me some questions. That would be fun. What is your least favorite household task and why? And what is your favorite? I would say my least favorite is cleaning. Like, I don't mind tidying. That's actually pretty fun and satisfying. Makes me feel good. Decluttering, I love it. But like cleaning bathrooms and toilets and all of that, I don't see any enjoyment in that. I love cooking. By far, if that's considered a household task, maybe it isn't. So maybe that's a cop-out, but I love cooking. I'm glad that it's enjoyable for me because it is something that we have to do so much, but it's really fun. I also like cleaning up the kitchen. It's such an instant gratification. It gets so messy, probably 3 times a day or more, completely destroyed. And then with just about 30 minutes of hardcore action, it looks beautiful. I can light a candle and walk away and just stare at it. Just stand back and look at how pretty it looks. How do you get your kids to eat what you guys eat? I get this question a lot. And the thing is my kids don't eat everything. When I make something, sometimes the pickier ones, I have one kid in particular who's quite picky. He'll pick through and eat what he likes out of it. The older kids, they just eat the whole thing. They're to the point where they love the sauerkraut, they love the avocados, but it is just a thing that develops over time. I don't make special meals for the kids, but I don't also force it. I'm not like, you have to eat the green beans or you can't move on. It's totally fine to me as long as they're full. I try not to stress about it. Okay, so I got this question a bunch, over and over and over again. Are you going to have more kids? Will you have more kids? Are you done having babies? So I've talked about this one before, and we take it baby by baby. Now, when you ask me this question right after I've had a baby, I always say, I think we're probably done. And then when you ask me this question about a year after we've had a baby, I say, well, I guess we'll see. So, I mean, most likely if God blesses us with another baby, we will accept it and we'll just have to see, but can't say for sure that we won't. Let's just put it that way. No immediate plans, but at the same time, we'll just see what happens. I'm still nursing Daniel several times overnight. So very much, even though I'm about a year postpartum, I still feel like I have a tiny little baby. So I'm milking that one as long as possible. And I would appreciate a longer gap this time. Did you always want to homeschool your kids? So remember back to all of my researching when I first had my first child. We were at homeschool conventions, I kid you not, when our daughter was 3. And ever since we started looking into the prospect of homeschooling, pretty much from the moment we had our newborn, we always wanted to homeschool. I can't say that I felt that way before I had kids. I wasn't homeschooled. I really don't, or didn't, I do now, but I didn't know anybody who was homeschooled. And so it wasn't something I could say that, when I was a little kid or when I was a 16-year-old, I always thought I would have children and homeschool them. I didn't think about that at all. In fact, I think my mom says that I said I didn't even want kids, which is hilarious now to me. But ever since we've had children, yes, we've always wanted to homeschool them. We've been committed to the idea through indefinitely. I get people who ask me, are you going to quit in high school? We have never had any plans at all to quit homeschooling. Where would you love to travel outside the US? Oh man, I know I want to travel somewhere outside of the US, and this is just going to show how little traveling I've done. I've actually never traveled outside of the US. I've traveled all over the US. I think I've been to just about every state in this country, with the exception of Maine, New Mexico, Arizona. I don't believe there are any other states I have not visited. I really don't. I'll have to look at the map, but I'm pretty sure I've been to every other state. Oh, okay. Hawaii and Alaska. I haven't been to those, but I would love to travel outside the country. Luke and I occasionally dream about that. It will have to be after I don't have a nursing baby. It's just so hard to leave right now. We actually were able to do trips together, just the two of us, when I was 30 weeks pregnant with my fourth and when I was 30 weeks pregnant with my fifth. By the time we got to our sixth, Daniel, we did not do that trip. I think it's just so difficult to find someone to care for that many kids while you're gone. And so if maybe at some point we will do something like that, but I don't know. What are your suggestions? I would love to travel outside the US, but it hasn't been something I have felt that it's possible enough to really allow my mind to wander and dream about it. What would you and your husband be doing if you didn't have 6 kids? That is incredibly difficult to imagine. I mean, I have absolutely no idea. I probably wouldn't be blogging about what I'm blogging about because so much is centered around family and just taking care of a family. So I have no idea. We met when I was 19. We got married when I had turned 22 the month before. And then we had our first exactly a year later. So just after I turned 23. So much of our lives together, or pretty much all of our lives together, have involved children. So it's really hard to say. Favorite healthy and junk food, restaurants you like, best date after marriage you went on. So restaurants and date, we always go to the same place. We have a winery near us, and they only have about 5 things on their menu since before COVID that they just closed their kitchen down to the point of having like the same 5 things. And so we're totally over the food, but it's just so pretty. If you've watched my Instagram stories, whenever I show us there, you will understand why we just go back week after week. They always have live music, just someone playing their guitar. It's always very relaxed. It's outside. It's a beautiful view. They set it up so that you feel like you're hanging out in someone's courtyard. It is just so pretty. It's a farmhouse, and there's this little patio with the string lights and the guy playing his guitar over in the corner. It just has such a beautiful atmosphere. Okay, I think I'm just going to take 1 or 2 more here. All right, how do you get your kids, how do you get your kids to let go of cheap toys they never play with? So this is probably not the right answer, maybe a little deceptive, but I usually will just sneak them out of there. If it's a toy they don't play with, if they're not going to notice, I will just bring a black trash bag upstairs, stuff it in there. If kids inquire as to what is in the trash bag, I usually say, don't look. Trust me, you will never notice if it's in there. It's something you're not into. Now, the key is to get it to Goodwill long before anybody opens the bag, which we struggle with. Sometimes they're sitting in the van for a while. Somebody rifles through it, and then you just have stuff in the van. So the goal is to get rid of it really quickly. I have on occasion taken and put something into a holding place. So we have this antique wicker trunk thing on top of the armoire in our bedroom. We don't use it for anything because it's so out of the way. You could use it to store something, but the trick would be remembering what's in there, which is a challenge. So I was getting rid of something in my girls' room one time, and I really wasn't sure if it would be missed or not. And so I put it in there as a holding place to keep it for a while to see if anybody mentioned it, because I don't want to get rid of something that they truly love. Usually I know what those things are, but occasionally I'm wrong about it. And so yeah, I get rid of things without anybody knowing. And you know what? It's only happened once, and I do remember this very well. And this is the chance you take, but it's only happened once that I got rid of something that they wanted. And it was a difficult day, I guess, not really that bad, but when they noticed, it wasn't good. But then they've forgotten about it pretty darn quickly. Everybody in this house agrees that in your room, you enjoy it more, you play with the things you have more. We all agree that we love it. The kids even agree with it. It's just the part of getting there that's hard to get them to agree to. How do you not get sick of cooking all the time? Lucky for me, I actually love it. Cooking is another creative thing that I enjoy. It's something I enjoy, like I enjoy sewing. I would much rather be cooking than doing just about anything else. Cooking always feels like a fun break for me. Like, okay, you know what? I'm sick of doing this or that. Let's just go cook. It really helps that food changes with the seasons. So I have a new zest each new season. Like right now, I'm so excited about soups and stews and chilies. It's so fun to be eating something like that, something new, something that makes me feel cozy and gives, the fall vibes, that it really helps. And then in the summer or spring, there's new foods that are constantly ripe and ready, like greens in the beginning of spring, and then all of the vegetables throughout summer, that it does help me to stay excited about it because there's always something new to use, like fresh herbs. And then right now, lots and lots of pumpkin. I even like baking. And so we'll make a lot of things with pumpkin. Thankfully for me, I enjoy it. But if you get really sick of it, just stick with basics, make eggs and veggies if you have to. Do you ever have help with childcare, nanny, babysitter? The only thing that we do for that is a weekly date night babysitter, which is just my sister. Other than that, no, we do not. So she's actually coming tonight and we're going to go on a little date. Okay, this is the last one I'll take. And then I'm going to break this into a part 2 or just continue to use these questions at the end of each podcast episode. So, did you have a job before you were married? I graduated college in 2007 and then I actually also got married in December of 2007. So I didn't have a whole lot of time between graduation and marriage, actually 0 time, to really establish myself in the career in the field that I graduated in. And then we got pregnant with our firstborn right away. And I knew that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I actually just took little jobs, like I cleaned houses and I was a substitute teacher. I did that while I was pregnant because I didn't really want to get an official career knowing that I would just be quitting it in less than 9 months. I was a waitress when I was in high school. I worked at my family's feed store as a teenager, but an official 9-to-5 type of career I've never had. All right, well, that will wrap it up for now. If I didn't get to your question, or if you have a question that you want me to answer, you can send it to me on a DM, and I will be continuing to sprinkle these throughout my last segment on each podcast episode. If you are not yet a member of the Farmhouse on Boone resource library, where I have access to everything you need to start your own simple living journey, you can get that at farmhouseonboone.com/farmhouse resources. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in episode 73 of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast.